For the past
for higher education and $78 billion in defense spending cuts.
If we're going to walk the walk when it comes to fiscal discipline, these kinds of cuts will be necessary.
He's also proposing to slash billions from a program that helps poor families pay their heating bills. States would lose $1 billion for water treatment plants and other infrastructure projects, and large airports would see $1 billion in cuts. The president's plan would reduce the budget by 2.4% next year, and he promises over 10 years it would reduce the deficit by $1.1 trillion. And with the deficit expected to reach an all-time high of $1.65 trillion,
we're reducing programs that are important programs that we care about, and we're doing what every family does when it sits around its kitchen table. We're making the choice about what do we need for the future.
Democrats and Republicans agree cuts need to be made. Where they disagree, what to cut and by how much.
When are we going to get serious about cutting spending? It has to happen, and it needs to start now. We're broke.
And John Harwood is CNBC's chief Washington correspondent. John, good to see you. So the president is proposing all these cuts, proposing, though, a 28% increase for the Securities and Exchange Commission. Those are the folks that regulate Wall Street. He's giving them more money. How much pushback is this budget going to get?
Well, there's going to be a lot of pushback, Contessa, from what's in this budget. And by the way, this little thin volume is only a tiny, slender piece of it. You've got about 5 more phone books that go with this thing. They're going to argue over the nature of the cuts, the pace of the cuts, but they're also going to fight over what's not in this budget, because President Obama is not choosing at this moment to go after the long-term budget problems of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and tax increases on the middle class, which most people think is going to have to be part of the long-term solution.
And so when we're talking about the fact that he is also increasing spending, not only for the regulation on Wall Street, but also transportation up 68% for things that he has considered real priorities, more money, almost $30 billion for clean energy, also more for biomedical research. He's still sending the message that he thinks investment is important in things that are going to take our country into the future.
Absolutely, and he's trying, by doing that, to drive a wedge within the Republican Party. If you look at polling, Republicans who sympathize with the Tea Party want to cut a lot of stuff across the board, environmental protection, education, but those Republicans who are not associated with the Tea Party, that's half the party, have views a lot more like Democrats on those, and the president's counting on them to say we're trying to win the future and make Republicans be the party of negative and naysayers, and we can't grow, and he thinks he can make some headway on that.
All right, John Harwood at the White House. John, thank you. The Pentagon says it's close to a funding crisis. It says lawmakers haven't even passed its 2011 budget yet. And already it's been forced to trim $78 billion from its budget over the next 5 years. Linda Bilmes is the Daniel Patrick Moynihan Lecturer in Public Policy at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government and the co-author of The $3 Trillion War. Linda, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Nice to have you here today. It seems like the Pentagon is really stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, it's prepared to cut some programs it says it doesn't need anymore, to cut, for instance, specific planes and jets and fighting equipment it says it doesn't need. On the other hand, it says it can't move forward unless they pass a budget for them.
Well, I think that the problems at the Pentagon in the budget are very deep and pervasive, and this budget that the president proposed does not go deep enough in terms of cutting into defense. The Defense Department over the last, since the last 9 years, since 9/11, increased by $900 billion. And much of that money was really squandered. That's not counting Iraq and Afghanistan. We actually have a smaller, older Navy fleet, a smaller, older Air Force, and an Army which is the same size but very exhausted by all of the repeated deployments.
You're talking about yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, the problem at the Pentagon is that we actually do not know where we are spending our money. Half the money is going to overheads in contracting and purchasing and various indirect costs. There is no accounting system. They flunk their budget audit every year. And until we actually get a grip on how money is being spent in the Pentagon, we should not be appropriating more taxpayer dollars there.
Well, how can people who are responsible for strategy when it comes to our wars not have proper accounting?
Well, I think that is a very good question. The reason why we have accounting rules is so that we can have accountability over where money goes. And in the Pentagon, where they have flunked their financial audit every year for 20 years, we don't have that accountability, and we don't understand how much we owe, how much inventory we have, how many contractors we have, basic information.
You know, the interesting thing is this whole idea about the defense budget is making for strange political bedfellows, because you've got the anti-war left joining with conservative like Ron Paul and perhaps a couple others, Republicans who say, no, it's time to go in and take a stab at this sacred cow that is defense, especially for conservatives. It's time to go in and see where our money's being spent. You can have the arguments about where we choose to spend it in terms of wars and those kinds of things, but it's time to at least get it on the table. Do you see in a realistic way that happening this year?
You know, I think that when you look at the budget situation, the president is proposing cutbacks in some of his favorite programs, but that only tackles a very small part of the budget. Medicare and Social Security are very, very difficult, and so the place where there is public support for taking a stronger look is in the Defense Department. So I think it is a real possibility that you could see a bipartisan coalition saying that we need to take a look at the defense budget and understand how to actually cut fat out of that budget.
Linda, it's so good to have you with us today. Thank you so much for your perspective.
Thank you.
So my big question today, why is defense such a sacred cow? I'd like to hear your thoughts. We're already having a lively conversation online. You can reach me at Facebook, on Twitter. My email address is contessa@msnbc.com.